Hello everybody, welcome to the fourth video in a series where I'm walking us through the midterm project. Before we get back into it, I'm going to pose my first quiz question to you, and this is more of a task than it is a question. What I'd like you to do is to take a picture that for you represents the most positive aspect of self-isolating. There's of course a lot of negative to focus on in being cooped up, but hopefully there's some silver lining for you. There's something that's positive. And so I'd like you to take a picture of that, and I'd like you to provide me a 2 to 3 sentence description of what I'm looking at and why you believe this is the best aspect of self-isolation. Keep in mind I'm going to try to pull a couple of these and include them in my lecture for next week. So if you don't want your picture in a YouTube video, then don't include a picture of yourself. And if you don't want your picture included at all, just let me know. Just put a little note that says I don't want to be in your YouTube video. Alright, so getting back into it, we're at step 3 here, and at this point we're going to identify the most problematic dorms. So how we're going to do this is we're going to look at the number of crimes that we see at each of our dorm rooms in our data set. So we'll use pivot tables here. So first thing we'll do is we'll select all of our data. We'll go ahead and insert a pivot table. We'll keep these options here as we have been. And we'll get to our new sheet where we're going to build our pivot table. So how we'll do this, how we can identify accounts per dorm room, is we'll click location 1, all of our dorm rooms pop up, and then we'll pull that down to our values field, and we easily get this information. Right, so we can see that Holly Point Commons, Chestnut Hall, and Mimosa Hall are our 3 highest crime dorms. As part of this, I asked you to create a bar chart or a column chart, and so to do that we'll click pivot table, stick with this cluster column, and click OK. Alright, again, I'm not going to go through how this should be cleaned up, but just go ahead and do that yourselves and insert it into your midterm project report. In addition, in step A, what I ask you to do is I ask you to create a chart for that depicts only the top 3 crime, or the 3 highest crime dorms, and I want you to provide a breakdown of the violent crime, property crime, and other crime, and each dorm is going to have 3 bars in that chart, and we haven't learned how to do that yet. I initially tasked you with learning that on your own, but I'll show you how to do that. So first thing I'll do is delete this chart here. And how we can just work with our 3 highest crime dorms is we can click this drop down arrow here. We can deselect all. We can select Chestnut Hall, Holly Point Commons, and Mimosa, and click OK. And now we've just got those listed in our pivot table. So I can now insert a new pivot chart that's just going to show these 3 dorms. But right now what we have is just the breakdown of total offenses, but we want to have bars for property crime, violent crime, and other crime. So this is how we'll do that. All we have to do is go to our pivot chart fields box and click crime category. And what we see is that now we have, for each of these 3 dorm rooms, we have 3 different bars that shows the breakdown of crimes. All right. Now I showed you how to do this. What I'm going to challenge you to do is figure out how you clean this up to make it an attractive chart, because right now it's not very attractive. We've got a lot of spacing here and some lines that we might not need. So Google around and see if you could find some other charts that are similar to this, and if you could figure out how to clean them up and make them nicer. All right, and for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to step B of question 3. So here I'm asking you now just to focus on our top 3 dorm rooms. And what you're going to do is start analyzing crime at these dorms separately. So what we're going to first do is come up with counts of crime, or of each crime type by day of week and hour of day by dorm room. And you're going to include a bar graph depicting counts by day of week and a line graph by hour of day for each dorm room. So I'll do this for one dorm room, and I'll let you work on the other 2 on your own. But the first thing that we have to do is create the required variables. So we need a variable for day of week, and we also need a variable for hour of day, and we don't currently have that. So I'm going to show you how to create that now. So if you recall, we have a couple of different variables that get at dates and times. I mentioned in previous videos that very often police crime data will have a start date and an end date, and that's because consider a crime like burglary. Right? Someone goes on vacation on a Monday, they come back home on Sunday and find that their home has been broken into. Well, you don't really know exactly when that offense occurred because they were gone all week. So that's why we'd have a start date, the date that the family left, and an end date when they came home and they realized that their home had been burglarized. So there's good reason to have crime data in this format, but what we're going to do, just because we're not going to get into how we can use this data, we're just going to rely on the date and time that a crime was reported. So this is going to be, it's not necessarily going to be accurate in terms of when the crime occurred, but for the project I think it's fine. So just to make this easier, I'm going to just delete these two. Why does this keep popping up? I'm going to delete these two variables. Right? Again, don't have to do that, and I normally wouldn't do that if I was working with real crime data, but just for the project we will. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first insert a new column, and I'm going to play with the format that our date and time of report is in. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I don't change this field as it is I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste into my new column. Once I do that, I'm going to change this to time. So this is going to be the label of the variable that I'm going to create. Now what I'm going to do is select all of the data in this column, and I'm going to change its format. Right? So currently it is in a custom number format, and that's why we've got the date and then the time. But I'm going to make this just a time variable. So I'm going to click this box here, and I'm going to make sure that custom is selected. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this format to military time. So I'm actually going to go up to time and click that, and then I'm going to choose this second option here. Right? This is military format, and then I'm going to click OK. Right, and so now we have our data that we pasted in this column. Right, it initially looked like this, but now we're just looking at time. Now what I'm going to do is insert another column, and I'm going to, for now I'll leave this variable label blank. What I'm going to do is first walk you through the steps of creating an hour variable, and this is going to be actually, we're going to end up putting another time variable in this column, but I'm going to show you why we're going to do that first. So if you recall, we used that function earlier, that formula earlier, where we pulled out the first offense when we had multiple offenses listed in our nature column. And the reason we did that is because we just wanted the first offense so that we could pretty easily look at the different breakdown of crime type. So if we hadn't done that, we would have all sorts of different variations, which meant that we wouldn't be able to very easily create a violent and property crime variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that same formula to pull out the hour that's listed in our new time data. So first I'm going to show you why we need to change this this variable here. We've got to change the format of this time variable. So if we wanted to create an hour variable, what we would do is we would tell Excel to pull out all of the text here, all of the numbers that appear before this colon. Right? So we would use a similar formula to what we used earlier, and that would be this. We would tell Excel that this cell is going to be equal to left open. The column we're pulling from is C2 here. So I'm going to select that, find, open, and I'm going to put a colon in parentheses here, comma, C2, close this out, -1, and close this out, and hit enter. And so when I do that, I can double check and see that my formula is correct, but I'm getting an error message. And the reason is because these are currently, although this is what's being shown in the cells, this is what's underlying these data. And so we're not able to pull the text because it's currently in a time format. So what we have to do is we have to change that. So what I'll do is I'll delete this formula, and we'll make the data in this column text in this column. So we'll tell Excel that we want this cell to equal text, and then we'll have an open. We'll select the cell we're working with, which here is C2, comma, and we'll tell Excel that this is the format that we want our text to be in: hour, hour, minute, minute, and enter. So when we do, we get the same thing that's displayed in column C and column D. However, if you look up here, this is text, so it looks the same, but this is in time format and this has become text. So you have to make sure you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this all the way down. All right, so now we've got time in a text format. I'm going to now label this time text. I'm going to insert a new column, and here is where we're going to create our hour variable. So we'll label this hour, and we'll use that same formula that I just put in that didn't work. Right, so we'll tell Excel that we want this cell to be equivalent to left, and here we're working in D2, so I'm just going to click D2, find, open. We're putting a colon in here, not a semicolon. And when I enter that formula, I now have an hour variable. So this is occurring during the third hour of the day. Here we've got 03, and this is now what we could use to create our chart that's depicting trends over the course of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to all of these cells. All right, so now we've got our hour column that we can use, and the next thing we need to do is create a date column, or I'm sorry, a day of week column. So one more time, I'm going to insert a new cell, or a new column. Call this day of week. And what I'll do is I'll use that weekday formula that we used in a previous exercise to pull out a weekday for this particular date. And this formula is equals choose open weekday. We're going to choose cell B2, and now we're going to tell Excel what we want our weekdays to represent. So we could use numbers as labels, or we could use the day of the week itself, and that's what I'm going to do. So the first day of the week is going to be Sunday, second is Monday, third is Tuesday, fourth is Wednesday, fifth is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Close this out and hit enter. And so what we now have here is we've got a day of the week for September 29th, 2019. And again, we can apply this to the rest of the cells. All right, so before we move on to the next series of steps, I'm going to end this video here because I'm at the end of my time limit. So I will see you in the 5th video.